Spring in the Lucerne Napf area. The shovel is over my shoulder. I'm on the way to panning for gold. My primary school teacher told me that there is gold in the Napf area. The Romans were already looking for it. I went gold prospecting for the first time when I was 15, in 1979. Where did I go? To a creek with an obvious name, the Gold Creek. And here I am again in spring 2021. Everything is as it should be. The sky is blue, the scent of pine in my nose. That fills me with peace and quiet. A bubbling creek, and soon the gold shines in the sunshine. But wait, what's going on here? The gold color spray? What's that supposed to mean? I think this man here has an unfulfilled longing. He seems to long for the gold vein. His longing might be called the mother lode. That term originates in the California gold rush. It means the legendary gold vein from where all gold comes from, where all gold has its origin, just the source of the gold. Everybody wants to find the mother lode. It is the hope of every gold prospector to reach the main lode, the core zone. We are not in California. We are in Switzerland. The rivers Aare, Reuss and Limmat cross the Midlands and are widely known. They also carry gold. This is lesser known. Aare and Reuss have their source in the Napf area, a hilly pre-alpine country with an elevation of up to 1,400 meters, about 5,000 foot. Countless creeks origin in a star-shaped pattern at the Napf summit. For the novice, these many valleys are completely confusing, but all the creeks join the area at the river.
The gold of the Napf has a history of over 2,000 years. We can divide it into three epochs. The epoch of the Helvetians and Romans, the epoch of the medieval gold prospectors, and we recreational gold prospectors of today. We Helvetians shall be a people rich in gold and who love peace. That is what two Roman historians wrote shortly before the Christian era. The Helvetii, a Celtic people, have probably already looked for the gold in our rivers. They made beautiful gold jewelry. The Romans, who are known to have been meticulously good gold prospectors, pretty sure have looked for the source of the Napfgold. Two rivers in the Lucerne Napf area are called Fontanne, which in Latin is reminiscent of the word source, fons, or fountain, fontana. So I am not the only one who is looking for the source of the Napfgold. When prospectors look for the mother lode, they usually start downstream. They are slowly walking upstream, testing and observing whether the quality and quantity of the gold changes. This wandering upwards often is also evident in the exploitation of gold deposits over the course of contemporary history. After the Roman era, gold panners worked on the Rhine and the Aare and Reuss for centuries. They were called the Golders. We don't know much about them. In the year 1114 we can read for the first time about Swiss placer gold. It was panned from the Reuss River and, listen carefully, was used to pay taxes. In 1479 a geographer mentions the Reuss as the right river of gold. The 3 centuries between 1500 and 1800 were the heydays of gold panning in Lucerne. The Golders had to deliver their finds to the state of Lucerne. A total of 31 kilograms of gold was delivered, and the state of Lucerne even minted gold ducats from it. The Golders of the medieval age were mainly active along the Reuss, from Bremgarten upwards to the confluence of the Kleine Emme river. But they also went further upstream. So let's follow them into the valley of the Kleine Emme.
I stop at the village of Werthenstein on my way from Lucerne to the Napf area. The 5 river bands of Werthenstein were a popular gold discovery site about 500 years ago. Imagine, at that time, this landscape was probably largely forested. No church, hardly any houses. An elderly man from the Netherlands was prospecting for gold here on the Kleine Emme River around the year 1500. Apparently he found quite good, because he even stayed right next to the river overnight. He heard singing and saw a bright light on the opposite hill suddenly one night. The next day he hurried there to pray and continued doing that every day. Sick people joined him of curiosity, and they were healed. The place of pilgrimage called Werthenstein was born at that time. In the 1930s, my father and 11 siblings grew up in the house opposite the monastery church. It was a lively time with this large family and a bakery. Today, not a single person of my relatives lives here anymore. I am visiting the last resting place of one of my many uncles and aunts. I am deeply touched to discover that above that place an old faded fresco tells the story of the medieval Dutch gold panner. The gold washing chair, which was covered with a rough cloth, is faintly visible, just like on the woodcut in the book of George Agricola, published in 1556. I actually wanted to trace the Napfgold to its source, but I unintentionally started to trace the source of my roots. Wonderful are the works of God, it says below on the fresco of the medieval gold panner. That suits my life. But let's go further upstream to the source of the Napfgold. The hope of finding the source of the gold is apparent in an incident that began around the year 1470 and continued to attract illustrious names such as Ludwig Pfeiffer, nicknamed the Swiss King, until around 1770. It's all about an alleged gold mine. It was named a true gold fountain and was said to have been located near Dieplischwand at the Great Fontanne Creek. Reinward Zisat, a contemporary chronicler from the city of Lucerne, described it as the origin of gold. Zisat's description of a long and deep canyon, about an hour's walk upstream from the confluence of the Fontanne and the Emme River, applies fairly well to the Donderloch near today's farm called Dieplischwand. This is where the legendary gold vein is supposed to be hidden. From this vein, according to Zisat, the gold drifts in the sands of the Fontanne Creek towards the Emme and Reuss River in a small, delicate, thin, glittering flakes. We do not know whether this gold fountain really was a hard rock gold mine or just a panning site. In any case, we read in the old writings again and again about new attempts to exploit that gold source, but never about the results. Bad omen? Not necessarily. But first, let's recall history to mind. The construction of roads and railways, starting at about 1800, changed the valleys. Profitable gold placers no longer formed along the rivers. Those rivers have been straightened and tamed to protect people against flood. This is why the last gold panners were active around the year of 1870 on the great Lucerne gold rivers like Reuss, Emme and Wicker.
The Napfgold awoke from a slumber of about 100 years at the end of the 1960s. Katharina Schmid, a geology student at the University of Bern, wrote a doctoral thesis on the gold of the Lucerne Napf area. Her conclusion after a few years of field research was: the gold from the Napf can only be recommended to recreational gold panners with a sense of adventure and gold digging romance. That was the starting point of the recreational gold prospectors area. These are the milestones of that time. 1979 was a particularly eventful year. Many articles were published in the media about the gold from the Napf area. The reason was a theatre performance held in Hergiswil about the gold prospecting attempts during the troublesome years of World War II. A journalist visited the amateur gold panners in what was then their El Dorado. And that was a place we just heard about. The medieval gold fountain of the Donderloch. In that narrow gorge, where there is a constant risk of falling rocks, they indeed found an increased concentration of gold.
The really good spots had already been exploited when I came in 1979. That's why I choose a river section 1 to 2 kilometers further downstream as my El Dorado. This was near the hamlet of Aenetegg, where I shoveled many 8-hour days. Then that is what actually applies to the Napf area. The more and harder you dig, the more gold you find.
Was meinst du zur Lage hier?
Es hat extrem Begrabungen gegenüber früher.
My thoughts go back to the last 40 years while standing on that small bridge over the Fontanne today. Here Ferdinand, a globe-trotter over 70, found an extraordinary gold flake together with Peter Pfander and Roland Branner on his first gold panning day. Beginner's luck. It was here that I met Charlie Bucher on a snow-rich winter day in January. He shoveled through a gravel bank all alone because in winter no flood disturbed his week-long works. This is also the spot where Rudi Lemke and Benno Fischer taught me how to continuously shovel at a leisurely pace, so that you are able to shovel a whole day. Here, Willy Hossmann invited me to see his gold. He had hidden it under the floor of a cellar cut into the Napf conglomerate rock. A few years later, he had disappeared without leaving a trace, as if swallowed up by the earth, and was never seen again. So many stones, like people.
Each one different. Colorful, rounded, big, small.
Der Victor ist hier gerade ein bisschen am Erkunden von Gegend und dem Flusslauf. Sucht ein bisschen nach Bedrockstellen. Anscheinend hat sich das in den letzten 10 Jahren hier ziemlich verändert. Wird ein spannender Tag.
Irgendwie wäre guckt, dass wir auf Bedrocks kommen, aber das jetzt nicht. Aber immerhin ein bisschen Metall. Sehen wir dort mal.
This is the spot where my first YouTube video was made in 2004.
It is the one where I demonstrate a slight shovel bouncing to eliminate the pebbles.
Übrigens, das mit dem lockeren Schaufelwippen, es ist nicht so locker. Am Abend bin ich total kaputt.
At that time, I imagined that after 25 years of hobby gold prospecting, there would probably only a little gold have been left. But no, my diary tells me I found 0.2 gram of gold in 2 hours, including a 5 mm flake. Not too bad. In the 1980s, however, I found 1 gram per day in a good spot when shoveling 8 hours. And today, in the summer of 2021, we are keen to renew old experiences. Exactly the same place as almost 20 years ago. Well, after 2000 years of prospecting for gold, it's no wonder that there hasn't been that much gold left. Gold does not regrow. It's a finite resource. I do no longer shovel 8 hours a day, but still 3 to 4. The result? 0.1 gram of gold.
Eine spezielle Aufmachung. Dermassen viel Wasser. Ich kann die Schleusen fast nicht platzieren. Und ich habe da das erste Mal eine Aufwärtsströmung. Etwas Neues, ja. Aber es funktioniert. Es ist noch ganz witzig mit dieser Aufwärtsströmung. Am Anfang ist es extrem wild, aber da unten hat es einen Bereich, der sich ein bisschen beruhigen kann.
Rigu and I are keen to know where to find the last undiscovered gold from the Napf. Our strategy? finding a new creek. We do it like the old-timers did, going further upstream, closer to the source. We look for small creeks in the steep and remote gullies where the evil spirits live and nobody dares to go, in the middle of nowhere.
Wir haben tatsächlich schon die ersten Körnchen gefunden. Nur klein, aber es hat.
Da steht man an und weiss nicht mehr hinter sie, weder vorne sie.
Wow, no other moment is more exciting than looking for new gold discoveries, against all odds.
Ui, das hat Metall, das klippert richtig. Enorm. Prachtvolle Nägel. Also, wollen wir schauen, ob es ein bisschen Gold drin hat. Tatsächlich. Und das sensationell von diesen paar Schäufchen. Das ist ein neuer Bach prospektieren.
Ein kleines Truhei.
Allerdings, da steht der Laie.
The Enziloch is an even more extreme canyon. There the so-called Enzi spirits live and nobody dared to go there in ancient times. It's a valley basin near the Napf summit where the Kleine Fontanne creek originates. In the meantime, I've learned to love the Napf area, regardless of the gold. The Napf area offers spectacular and mystical places, such as the Enziloch. Here, in the rough nature, I feel the old archetypal fields of tension. I am completely exposed to the cosmos as a human being. Here it's a matter of life or death when the elements of nature crash on me. I begin to realize the universe is ultimately spiritual. I don't believe in the occult and magic, but I also don't want to limit my thinking and stop before the supernatural world. The gold-rich Celts believed that those born among mortals could become immortal. It was the gold that was supposed to help them on their way to eternity. The gold relics found in Celtic graves make that evident. Is a supernatural world not a modern concept anymore? Maybe out of fashion, but not disproved as far as I know. Our modern time is just another epoch which, like all epochs, has its characteristic errors. But what about that source of gold? Last chance, the Goldbach Creek, a tributary of the Grosse Fontanne. It also origins almost at the top of the Napf summit. It was already mentioned in old documents as early as 1596 and 1613. Here, in 1976, a group of crazy people began to look for the source of the gold from the Napf. Willy Hediger and his colleagues drilled a tunnel into a vertical conglomerate rock face below Alp Goldzeiten. But they soon realized that it was easier to find gold in the creek than in the rock. Today, their scaffold along the rock face, the two huts and the transport cable car have disappeared again. It was a useless search for the gold source. Has the search for the legendary Napf gold vein simply gone out of fashion, or has it been disproved? The geologists say disproved. Enjoy that great view from the Napf to the south. This is the mountain range called the Alps. And now imagine 20 million years ago. The gold vein of the Napf lay down there, 100 to 150 kilometers to the south. The gold traveled here in huge prehistoric rivers. They transported huge masses of gold-bearing alpine gravel to the north. This enormous debris has long since turned back to rock, the typical Napf conglomerate rock. Rain and sun now weather the conglomerate for the second time and flush it into the Napf creeks, where the heavy gold remains and accumulates in new gravel banks. The average gold content in these creek sediments is about 1,000 times higher than that of the conglomerate rock.
I am back at Goldbach Creek. Here where my story with the gold of the Napf area began more than 40 years ago on White Sunday 1979. The gold vein on the rock wall over here has been washed away by rain. Like that one I came across in 1979. A couple of Boy Scouts are said to have sprayed it on the rock wall. That's at least suspected the farmer I spoke to afterwards. And me, at that time, I really thought that's how real Napf gold looks like. In the meantime, it has become autumn. I know there are no gold veins in the Napf area. No mother lode. There is no single source of gold in this area. In the last 2 years, I have been noticing more and more gold is only a reflection in my life. A reflection for God. My true source of the gold lies in heaven in a daily relationship with Jesus Christ. This summer I had the impression that God has been looking for me during my whole life, as I am looking for gold nuggets as a hobby gold prospector. And he found me 30 years ago. And since then, he sees me as a precious gold nugget and is happy about me every day. The gold in the Napf Creek is running dry. My physical energy is decreasing with the age. But the spring in heaven never runs dry. There is the source of my life, my joy, and my strength. Looking back on my life, I can say this supernatural source exists and God spoke into my life. You might say it is a coincidence, this story with the gold vein on my first prospecting day, or that my father grew up just beside a monastery founded by a medieval age gold prospector, or that panning for gold gives me pleasure for a lifetime. I say it's the working of God.
It is supernatural that Jesus rose from the dead. My longing and my natural joy is and will be panning for gold. Only God can fulfill this longing, like other longings. Love, be accepted, receive appreciation, being healthy. God writes the stories of salvation. He wants to write a story with everyone. That was my story, parallel to the history of the Napfgold. And what about your story?